Mr. Robbins, I'm not. Maybe we should all test to see if our mics are on. Testing.
Testing.
Testing. Somebody over here.
Testing.
Someone's laptop.
Testing. Just take a moment to make sure everybody is set and tied in and online. And Mr. Robbins, unsure of the protocol here. The board chair has asked me to occupy this seat today. Is there any preliminaries that have to be done to make this official?
Just a motion to nominate you to chair the meeting.
I would nominate Director Morrison to chair the meeting. That was seconded by Director Martman. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? None opposed? None opposed, motion carries.
You shall now yield the chair.
I'll yield the chair to Director Morrison. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Stone. We have new names around the table. I'd like to begin by acknowledging our meeting is being held in the territory of the Coast Salish people. And to some extent, we occupy some Nuu-chulnjuth territory as well, and want to acknowledge their living in this land and stewardship of this land for the millennia that they've been here. With that, we have folks online, at home, and watching, and this is our first committee of the whole meeting as a group. I will be planning to be fairly methodical and informative during the course of this. We've got new people sitting around the table, and we want them to be effective and comfortable and enjoy this experience, and yet we've got work to do. So with that, I would go to the agenda and call for, first, Mr. Robbins, is there any additions to the agenda that haven't been considered here? I think we might have had some supplemental information come forward.
I'm not aware of anything to be added specifically to the agenda.
Excellent. I turn to committee. Any other additions to the printed agenda you have before us? Seeing none, could I have a motion to approve the agenda as presented? Moved by Director Stone, seconded by Director McGonigal. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Are there any opposed? None opposed, the motion carries. Just a housekeeping note for folks that this may be their first meeting or watching online. The system that we have here is one of we count all opposed votes, but if a person happens to be otherwise engaged or occupied and doesn't put his hand up or her hand up in either the affirmative or the negative, their vote counts in the affirmative. So with that, we'll go to adoption of the minutes of the meeting of October 12th. Mr. Robbins.
Recommendation that the minutes of the Committee of the Whole meeting of October 12th, 2022 be adopted.
Moved by Director Stone, seconded by Director Martman. Any discussion of those minutes? Seeing none, call the question. All those in favor? Are there any opposed? None opposed, the motion carries. Mr. Robbins, any business arising from those minutes?
No business arising, Mr. Chair. We go to Section 4, public input period.
Thank you. Is there anyone online that is registered to provide input to the committee today?
Nobody online, and I'm not sure if there's anybody here in the gallery.
Is there anyone in the gallery that would like to provide input to the board or to the committee today?
Other than the delegation? Yes.
Perfect. Seeing none, move on to the next item, delegations.
Your delegation today is with the Arts Council of Ladysmith and District, and they just want to take the opportunity to thank you and update you, and I'll let them introduce themselves, Mr. Chair.
All right, thank you. It's nice to see all the new faces and some old faces. And we're here from the Arts Council of Ladysmith and District. I'm sorry. And we're here to thank the CVRD for supporting the Arts Council financially for several years now. And just to let you know kind of what we've been doing, we haven't been since COVID, and we'd like to just update you. We have a 6-minute presentation, and you can relax and look at it. And my name is Kathy Holmes. I'm president of the Arts Council, and I'm here with our executive director, Daly, and Peg, and Lori, our board members that are with us today. There's lots happened to our art council through the pandemic, and you'll be able to watch it. If you'd just like to have questions afterwards, we'd be delighted to help you with them. Thanks. So somewhere there's going to be a presentation.
Avert your eyes. There's some confidential stuff here.
Pausing your presentation clock.
Thank you for your support.
Technology's great when it works.
Is this on a loop and you record it, or are you speaking to
There's
each
some
slide?
recorded and some reading part through it. So if you start with this slide.
Thank you for your support. Here is a snapshot of what we've been doing, what we are doing, and what we plan to do. In 2018, things were going well. We had a high attendance of people visiting the gallery, lots of people coming to Arts on the Avenue and light up the night. We had
Sorry, we're just trying to get rid of the share application pop-up.
many members submitting artwork to our exhibitions. We had private shows. We had busy classroom, a full gift shop. We had lots of really great renovations happening to our space, so our future plans were looking good. Things were going great. What could go wrong? In December of 2018, we had a strong windstorm that blew a portion of the roof off of the machine shop that housed the art gallery. With the rain and the damaged roof, unfortunately, the studio space of First Nation carver John Marston's caused a lot of damage and he was forced to vacate the building. The gallery was closed from January to March of 2019. We went online, we started focusing on social media and Zoom, and then of course in 2020 the gallery was closed to the public for 8 long months because of COVID. With renovations happening at the machine shop, the town of Ladysmith found the Arts Council a decommissioned school as a temporary space for the gallery, offices, and art classrooms. We applied for a Canada Council grant twice and were awarded both digital literacy grants, which created the Digital Innovation Group, where we researched the importance of arts on Vancouver Island. Research by Nordicity helped us prove that art is a big deal. We also were able to present to the Vancouver Island Economic Summit as well as the Vancouver Island Tourism. And you can find out more information about this research at www.digarts.ca. Through the digital literacy grants, we invited 25 arts councils on Vancouver Island to join us. 5 accepted. That included Salt Spring Island, Comox Valley, Cowichan Valley, Hornby Island Arts Council, and the Old Schoolhouse Arts Center located in Qualicum Beach. The project was led by Aura Stein of the Arts Council of Ladysmith Board, where we were able to offer free digital literacy courses to over 400 artists on Vancouver Island. And we shared our staff's expertise with Kirsten Schrader of the CVRD. Because of COVID, we received additional funding to hire staff. We moved pretty much everything we did online. We hired a media coordinator to increase our online presence through Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. We hired an educational director to bring our classes online and in person, if possible, and to increase the variety of classes and registration numbers. And we were able to promote our bookkeeper daily to executive director. During this time, we were also able to move from a working board to a governance board. With low attendance for people coming to the school to view our gallery, we decided to take the gallery to them. We are working with the Royal LePage, who have given us a street corner window where we have our members show their work. We created a summer art walk with paintings in shop windows during July and August, and we've been also creating a lot of selfie stations for different events in downtown Ladysmith. We work closely with different schools for our art bombing projects, where students will paint wooden figures that we use to decorate the trees in downtown Ladysmith. In 2022, Arts on the Avenue was back. Over 6,500 people showed up to enjoy the arts. This 2-day event is the second largest juried arts festival on Vancouver Island. We had over 60 artists take part, and we also had a survey that indicated that most artists sold between $1,000 to $2,000 worth of art during the day. We also noticed that most visitors also spent an additional $65 in the community as well too. We host 12 exhibitions a year that are now also available online as well as in person. in February of 2021, we hosted the Fine Art Show entirely online, where we purchased software for this virtual exhibition. For our event opening, we had over 100 artists in attendance on Zoom. We had 163 art pieces juried into the show, and we had 300 submissions. In 2022, we hosted the first Fine Craft Show on Vancouver Island. During COVID, we moved our art classes and workshops online. This involved us having to teach our instructors how to use Zoom to teach their classes. We started to offer a variety of different types of workshops and classes for different age groups. We offered workshops for the Staminas primary school students. We created free YouTube videos of art classes and workshops on our YouTube channel. We were able to subsidize art classes for our kids' camps. We taught digital literacy workshops. And the great thing about hiring our education coordinator was that we were filling our classes to the max. In 2019, we joined forces with the Yellow Point Drama Group and ran a province-wide playwriting competition. The Nighthawks by Michelle Dines was the winner and was finally produced to a live audience in October of 2022. We also moved into music and started offering monthly concerts featuring local musicians. We love working with others. Here's just a small list of other nonprofits that have helped us, and we've worked with them. So what does our future look like? Well, we're hoping to move the gallery downtown to be closer to the public. We've launched a capital campaign to raise funds to move offices and classrooms to a more convenient and stable space. We're looking forward to when the machine shop will be ready to be occupied again. We're working on strategic planning, as well as working with the town to create an arts-friendly community. We look forward to more partnerships and ongoing research to better ourselves and the Cowichan Valley. We have many reasons to celebrate next year. In 2023, we will be celebrating 20 years in Ladysmith, 10 years of a juried fine arts show, 25 years of Arts on the Avenue, and celebrating 5 years of love, a literacy celebration for the amateur and professional poets of all ages. So here we go to 2023.
Well, thank you, and I'm not sure if anyone has any questions for you, but perhaps you could come up to the mic. And I turn to the committee. Do you have any questions for Kathy or any of her team that are here with her today? Director Stone.
Well, I can
Kathy,
just,
press the button, please.
yeah, I don't have any questions. I just want to thank the Arts Council for their perseverance through the last few years. In addition to COVID, I know kind of those slides went by quickly, but there's been a lot of barriers that have been placed in front of the Arts Council to do their programs, but they really have taken those as problems and challenges as opportunities to adapt. And if I hear the word pivot anymore, I'm done with pivoting, or else you end up spinning in circles. But I'm just so thankful to the Arts Council for their ability to adapt. And in the long run, I think that it's a good lesson for all of us and all these organizations that have been forced to change and adapt to the challenges, but is that out of this, when we can resume what was our formerly normal lives and ways of doing things, all of these changes, adaptations, and pivots will actually build bigger, stronger organizations with greater reach. And the Arts Council has been a fantastic example of that. So I just want to thank you guys as I just feel so lucky to have you in our community. And especially during the darkest days, those little art bomb projects and stuff were really really cool for the community, whether it was the hearts hanging in the trees or the crosses and the flower boxes for Remembrance Day. It just really sort of lifted people up when they needed it most. So thank you all very much.
Thank you very much. Anybody else?
Call on Director Nicholson.
Thank you. Thank you for your work. You know, the presentation was great as well. I think that we all really need to remember that arts in the community is one of those really important things that makes the community great and resilient and livable. And we often think a lot about our great trails for hiking and so forth, but I think a strong arts community is one of those things that really makes it a good place to live and is really great for economic development. So thank you.
Thank you.
I'll turn to Director Manhouse, and Mr. Elzinga has a couple of comments as well.
Oh, yes, I'll turn to, I'll turn. Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you for your presentation.
One of us.
What is your capital budget for the new location?
Which location? We have several. You mean the machine shop?
Yes.
You might ask Mayor Stone about that. I think they've applied for a grant for what, 5 million?
And does if you get that grant, will that cover the whole project?
Jump in, Director Stone.
That's the full building renovation, so we did receive a grant previously. As the layers of an onion on an old historic building, we discovered that the foundational and seismic issues were well beyond what was anticipated. So the first grant, $1.8 million, stabilized the building, saved the building, but it's about $5.4 million, I believe, to complete the entire building. The Arts Council inhabits a portion of the building, so that's not just for the Arts Council, though they are definitely the driving primary tenant in that building. But there are a multitude of uses that would be in that community facility, so that's the budget to get it there. Knowing Kathy and her team, there'll be substantial improvements they'll do to the gallery space when they're able to get back in there. And right now, it is the only sort of preserved space within that building. But we're hopeful with the energy upgrades that the building will become more affordable and sustainable for the long run and more comfortable for the tenants because it's historically a drafty old machine shop. So it'll turn it into a true community facility.
Thank you.
Mr. Elzinga.
To the committee, I'd be remiss if I didn't mention this, that Function 400 is the function that looks after some contributions to the arts, including contributions to the Arts Councils. It was established in 2016, and at the time we had 3 arts councils, the Cowichan Valley Arts Council in the core, we had the one in Chemainus, and we had the Ladysmith Arts Council. We did not have one in Cowichan Lake. We did not have the South Cowichan Arts Guild. And so over that time, those 2 arts councils have been developed primarily because some of the leadership of the Ladysmith Arts Council and the leadership they took for the region, not just in Ladysmith. So I'd really like to thank them for that regional approach in helping Cowichan Lake and South Cowichan as well. Thank you.
Any further questions? Director Abbott.
Chair Morrison, I'd just like to extend our gratitude for the lovely Christmas decorations, handcrafted. Thank you.
Thank you. And it's just a thank you, because I know how hard this job is.
Thank you very much, Kathy. Thank
Thank
you
you.
for coming and presenting and providing this information to us and the lovely gifts.
Thank
Thank you very much. Mr. Robbins, item 6, correspondence. Is there any?
Yes, Mr. Chair, correspondence, C1 and C2 are related, and for your information. This is a good heads up that if board members will check their emails, there is a request to add a late item at this afternoon's board meeting, which is a request from Cowichan Tribes to provide a letter of support for an application for funding related to these pieces of correspondence, that being the Weir project. Just some early information, but that'll be brought forward to you when you start the board meeting, and I'd ask that you check your emails for that information.
Thank you, Mr. Robbins. Any discussion of these items? I'm sure everyone's had a chance to look at them. Director Douglas.
And Mr. Chair, with regards to the second letter, there's reference to the conservation water license application being submitted this fall to the ministry. Wondering if perhaps our representatives on the Cowichan Watershed Board could provide an update on the status of that.
That's an excellent question. And I'm not sure that that can necessarily be provided in this meeting today. Which staff would we go to for some update on that?
Mr.
Could we-
Postings has popped up, Mr. Chair. I'm not sure if he's able to provide anything for you.
Mr. Postings, welcome.
Thank you. Currently, CVRD staff are working on submitting the license at this time. At the end, we are expecting that it will be submitted before the end of the year, so it is in progress and well along the way of being ready to be submitted before the end of the year here. So that's the latest update on that.
Conclude your inquiry. I think that there will be an update or inquiry from, our update on the activities probably fairly soon from the Watershed Board, and so I think stay tuned would be an appropriate way to move forward. So no further discussion on C1 or C2? And as Mr. Robbins has indicated, make sure you take some time in between meetings to have a look at the email that was sent around for the new business item of the board. Mr. Robbins, any information items number 7?
Nothing under item number 7. Moving to item 8, or agenda item 8, which is reports. R1 is a report from the Recycling and Waste Management Division with regards to amendment bylaw 4445, tipping fee adjustment. There is a 2-part recommendation. That be recommended to the board that CVRD bylaw number 4445, solid waste fees and regulations amendment bylaw 2022 be forwarded to the board for consideration of 3 readings and adoption, and 2, the board direct staff to consider all costs associated with landfill and garbage, including but not limited to staff, wages, and asset maintenance and replacement as part of future garbage fee adjustments.
Thank you, Mr. Robbins. So before we go to putting this on the floor, just for those people that may be watching at home, that we're in committee, this is where the bulk of the what we call heavy lifting goes on, and an opportunity for staff to present the information in the report and a synopsis basis for us to have some good discussion prior to this or any recommendation going to the board. So with that, I'm looking on the staff report. We have Mr. Boyson in the room. Will you be leading us through this particular item? Mr. Stevens will?
Thank you, Director. I'm not sure if Mark is responding. I can't hear him, but I can respond to this.
Mr. Stevens, apparently the baton has been passed to you for this one, so please proceed.
Yeah, so our recommendation is to increase the tipping fees as set out in the staff report to the board.
Thank you. Mr. Boyson, anything to add? Oh, he doesn't have a microphone in front of him. Please come to the lectern.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So yeah, the staff's happy to answer any questions you have. So for some of the new directors, we're happy to answer some more detailed questions for you as well about how tipping fees work. But you know, all the information is in the report. So I won't have anything else to add at this point. Just want to give the full opportunity to the board to ask any questions. And Mr. Stevens is here to answer some of those detailed questions as well.
Thank you for that. So I've got Director Nicholson and Director Douglas, but just, yeah, I think as a way of introduction to our newer members and people watching, we try to recover the costs of our operations there through tipping fees, and it's been outlined in the report. As prices go up, we get concerned because we want to make sure that the public is getting good value for their dollar, and yet we want to be respectful of the taxpayer as well. So with that, I'll go to Director Nicholson, and please proceed.
Thank you. I'm okay with the tonnage increase, but I was kind of I was triggered by the amount for when you go to the thing and dump like a garbage bag. So it's increasing from proposed to increase from $7 to $9, and I was wondering what the rationale for that was.
Thank you, Director Nicholson, through you, Mr. Chair. Yes, so the increase to the tipping fee is in line with the cost of the additional cost of the garbage being shipped out of the region to the Republic landfill. Other regions also have standard tipping fees that range from between $7 and $10 per load. So it's a standard fee that's all regional districts charge. There is obviously an increase in the tipping charge fees at the landfill, so we had to increase those minimum charges as well.
Anything further, Director Nicholson? Okay, just let me add to the list here. Director Douglas.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, I believe this is covered in the report, but I'd just like to confirm with staff, with regards to the increase in the tipping fees, this has been communicated to the municipalities that will be impacted. Is that correct?
Mr. Stevens?
Thank you, Director Douglas, through you, Mr. Chair. Yes, this has been communicated to the municipalities and also a few of the larger contributors, larger haulers that come to the facility as well.
Great, thank you.
Director Acton.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Can you hear me with this line? Okay. I have a few things. First, we're comparing ourselves to other areas that already have universal garbage, so I'm concerned about areas that don't already have universal garbage in place, and maybe kind of wondering why we don't wait until we have that service so that we don't increase the amount of dumping that's happening in electoral areas mostly, and it is quite high. And as a regional district, we have had several programs in the south trying to mitigate some of the dumping that's going on. And my understanding was that when you start raising the costs, that is something that it will have a negative encouragement of that happening. I guess I can stop there. I have another question or comment.
Mr. Stevens or Boyson?
I'll let Mr. Stevens first comment, and then I'll add anything else I need to after that.
Thank you, Director Acton, through you, Mr. Chair. So, yes, we have been, considering the impact of this on the residents. However, if we don't increase our minimum tipping fee by the $2 from $7 to $9, we're looking at about $110,000 shortfall, which would have to be covered by, through tax requisition to cover the operating costs at the facility. If you're I think you may be looking to the potential of illegal dumping. Over the decades, illegal dumping's been reducing over the years. Some of the other regional districts, like Quathit, they charge $240 a metric ton. They're going to be increasing their tipping fees to $245, and they haven't seen an increase in tipping or in illegal dumping.
Go ahead, Director Acton.
I guess it would be nice to know when we expect the universal garbage to come in place, but also I wanted to be able to bring up the fact that just recently, I think it was about 10 months ago, we started charging operators for bringing yard waste, and there's been a big negative impact in my community anyway. It was the most common thing that I heard on a negative thing about the CVRD, at least an item that people understood the CVRD takes care of it. So they'll talk about the roads, CVRD doesn't take care of that. But people were really upset about, because that was mostly impacting the vulnerable population, seniors, people with disabilities, because they have to contract somebody to haul it away for them, and then they were getting charged more because it was coming back to them. And then it's also encouraging yard waste to be dumped in greenbelt areas, and people are concerned about that with fire risk. And also, I took a picture, I could have shared it with the board. I went to the top of Baldy Mountain 2 Sundays ago, and it was a day, I suspect it was a day you were allowed to burn, and it was really bad. It looked like a very cloudy day, but it was just smoke. So I think by putting that in place, we've caused some negative effects that we didn't anticipate, and I would really like to see that come back to the board. I have asked already for that to come back to the board, and nothing has happened. So I look to the committee here to perhaps we pass a motion to bring that decision back to the board for reconsideration.
Thank you, Director Acton. So just prior to going to, right now I've got Directors McGonigal, Wilson, Justice, and I'll come back to Director Acton if she has more, but it might be appropriate now to look to staff. Can you just give us a quick primer on the solid waste management plan, curbside, and this function that we're talking here and how they interrelate? Because I think Director Acton's asked, a brilliant question, but there's components to that. Can you give us a brief description of how they interact and how they're different?
Sure. So I'll start, and then I'll let Doug fill in some of the gaps if there's anything I'm missing. So he's really our technical expert on it. But so the solid waste management plan for all the new directors as well is this is a plan that we develop, and it's also approved by the province. So it's provincially approved with targets and initiatives. And it's really our guiding actions for all of our solid waste group. Everything that we do, we follow through those actions. So a lot of the discussions we have for you and everything that comes to the board of the report has some sort of reference to that solid waste management plan as well. So the curbside collection has been an ongoing process. It's that 3-stream collection discussion has been approved by the board already to move forward with going with a full 3-stream collection, and how we're going to do it right now is how it's going to roll out is what's being reviewed right now by consultants. And so we're going to get that information back to staff in early January, and then we'll be coming back to the board to then propose some of the different options about how that rolls out. So that's for the 3-stream component. Anything else, though, just specifically you wanted to touch on about the relationship there?
Well, and I guess the point that you've got the solid waste complex, and which, curbside feeds into that, our corporate customers as well as our municipal partners all participate in the operations of that as well, which is a big transfer station, really.
Right, so yes. So it's this large transfer station, so it will affect the operations. I guess I just wanted to make sure I go back to the conversation about also the tipping fees and how it will be affected necessarily by the 3-stream. What the program that we choose and how we roll it out, it might not necessarily adjust those rates. It's not for the tipping fee, because that's the fee at the site as opposed to the curbside collection fee. So that's one piece I just wanted to add in there. Doug, did you want to add some other comments as well?
Thank you, Mark. Through you, Mr. Chair. Just I guess a couple things to add. With the impact of the charge for the commercial yard and garden waste, we're charging $60 a metric ton for yard and garden waste. The average load that comes into the facility is about 0.22 metric tons, so 220 kilograms, with a charge of $13.20 per load that comes into the facility. So with that, I would, seeing the loads that come into the facility, it's several homes that they're collecting those lawn clippings from, yard and garden waste, etc. So, I don't think that there's a significant impact to the residents, based on a $13.20 load of yard and garden that comes into the facility. But I will add that the savings to the CVRD is a little over $100,000 annually by charging the IC&I businesses the minimum $60 a ton.
Sorry, Mr. Chair, if I could just add to that, I think that, part of it is we do watch what other municipalities do. We learn from each other and other regional districts of how things work. Part of it is also that, so we would be the only ones that are not charging for this commercial fee as well. And it's, there's part of the loads that came in, the overall cost related to dealing with the large amount of material that would come in if there wasn't a cost to it. That has to get covered eventually down the road. So there's this cost savings that's being and I don't think we have the exact dollars yet, but there's a larger additional cost when we do have no control on the volumes of material that's coming into the facility with no charge to it. So this is going to be a constant issue in this discussion around solid waste. It's always going to be about balancing out between pricing and encouraging people to use the system as well. I just wanted to highlight that point as well. Thank you.
Thank you. I will go to Director McGonigal next.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you, just a couple of comments, if I may. I think in the west end of the Cowichan Valley, we have seen an increase firsthand of illegal dumping in the rural areas. It's not so much a problem within the municipalities and the boundaries themselves. When we saw the minimum balance go from 5 to 7, there was a significant increase, and I see that coming forward in the $9 increase for the minimum. On the universal collection, if we look at anecdotally the diversion of organics on communities that do implement that within their waste stream, a 40% reduction in landfill from that diversion, the savings within that moving forward could be incorporated into perhaps some reductions in tipping fees in landfill. Just a question, and then I have another comment.
I'll ask Mr. Stevens if he has a response, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Director McGonigal, through you, Mr. Chair. So I guess to answer your question, I can't imagine that there'd be reduction in tipping fees. It'd be less volume that we're shipping out of the region. But it'd be, nevertheless, it would be whatever the current rate is for the disposal of that material wouldn't change. It'd just be less materials that we're shipping out. So right now we're shipping, the garbage that we're shipping out is inclusive of that 40% organic material or organic waste in the stream. We'd just be shipping less of it to the landfill. Thank you.
Thank you very much. If I may continue, Mr. Chair, through you.
Another follow-up, yep.
So this is just a comment. It's more important than ever that we focus on the AVICC waste study that was done in the past, concentrating on moving away from exporting to something on the island that could be accommodated for our waste stream. Not only organically, but solid waste-wise, in whatever aspect that is moving forward. There was discussion on waste to energy, other options within that report. So given the complexity of Rabanco and the barging costs, the increase in fuel costs, and the constant pressures on tipping fees, I think it's more important than ever that we concentrate on that option and opportunity to have an island-made solution to this problem.
Thank you, Director McGonigal. I have Wilson, Justice, Stone, Acton, and Nicholson. Director Wilson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm looking at the report here, and there isn't a heading there under organics fees. Can you, and it does say in there that the current service provider the contract will end in July 2023. I'm assuming that current provider is in the Cobble Hill area?
That's correct.
Okay, and then it says that the CVRD will then go to market. Really, how many alternative providers are there likely to be within a reasonable radius? Is that the only one, or are there others that might be considered?
Through the chair to Director Wilson, I believe there are other options, but I'll let Mr. Stevens can probably highlight those for the board.
Mr. Stevens?
Committee.
Thank you, Director Morrison, through you, Mr. Chair. Yes, so there is a facility in Nanaimo that is very interested in processing that material and will likely be providing a bid once that goes out for a bid. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you very much for that. Just a quick comment, if I may.
Follow up, sure.
And you understand what my concern here is, as I've highlighted before, the amount of money that we've been paying to the Cobble Hill area has gone up and up and up, and we are still very concerned over some of the side effects that are going on. So anything that we can do to get some more competition in there so that we perhaps ship less to Cobble Hill would be very useful as far as my residents are concerned. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Wilson. I now have, I will go to Justice Stone Martman before I go back to Acton and Nicholson. Director Justice.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is with respect to the second recommendation, moving to consider the all costs associated with landfilling garbage. The report notes that there are certain costs that are currently not considered, mostly related to managing the garbage, like equipment and fueling and staff wages. So I was just wondering whether you have any preliminary estimates about roughly what that would add to the cost of per ton of garbage, landfilling garbage.
Thank you. I'd have to ask
Mr. Stevens?
Stevens for that response.
Thank you, Director Justice, through you, Mr. Chair. Yes, I mean, there are some definite costs. We haven't identified what those estimates would be, but we can do that work. But at this time, it is funded through tax acquisition. Thank you.
Follow-up, Director Justice? No?
Well,
Go ahead.
Just asked for a rough estimate. It was just like sort of $10, $100.
Could I perhaps ask of staff if that might be something that can be highlighted during our budget process?
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, we can do that for sure.
Will that suffice, Director Justice?
Thank you.
Yep.
Excellent. Director Stone.
Thank you. I feel like I have deja vu every time solid waste comes up. We're talking about, diversion, zero waste, rapidly increasing fees, and it is somewhat challenging to think that garbage minimums are going from $5 to $9 in a pretty short period of time. And in our areas, including, right across the border and just right beside Peerless, there's often illegal dumping in Ladysmith, and I don't know if that's hours of operation or tipping fees or a combination of both, but it's pretty troubling when you just go past in like literally a 90-second drive from the entrance to Peerless Road and you find consistent illegal dumping there, and it's become a practice to just go and check around the corner and clean it up. But that highlights that we're putting barriers up that are sort of counterintuitive to our zero waste goals. And I think that's why universal pickup is really important. The universal collection strategy, at least in my area, if you want to do the right thing, it's a burden both financially and time-wise. You have to pick up your garbage. It's a mess. It stinks. I do it every week. But especially in households with families and that are a little bit more active, it can create a bit of a burden both in terms of time and cost. And I know reviewing our budget for tipping fees at $9 a minimum, it's going to be cheaper in the proposed three-stream service to actually service our garbage needs than actually doing that work on top of the fuel and time that it takes. And you'll get better compliance with some of our goals for diverting organics and recycling once you have that three-stream pickup. So I think that's super important. And it just highlights this whole conversation, how important really moving more quickly if we can on implementing our solid waste strategies are to improving both the sustainability economically but also environmentally. And we do have to renew that conversation regionally with what's our long-term garbage. In today's day and age, taking care of our own side of the street is really important first, and exporting our garbage might seem like a good thing because it's out of our region, but it's not really truly responsible or sustainable, and we're at the whim of all these other economic pressures. So when it comes to this, I think that we just need to find some focus on implementing our solid waste strategy, getting the three-stream pickup going, and then really working communications-wise and strategy-wise with residents around just getting closer and closer to that zero waste, because we won't be able to lower tipping fees. It's the reality. But what we can do is lower the overall cost by reducing the amount of garbage that people are having to pay for. So if we're talking about reducing the solid waste costs of garbage going to Rabanco in the short term and whatever long-term solution there is, reducing the amount of garbage that people input into it is the best way we can to reduce costs. So we need to get to that zero waste strategy and start that communication, but it really starts with universal three-stream pickup.
Thank you. Go to Director Martman.
Thank you. I have a couple of questions and perhaps a comment coming from a rural area. The question I have first, I think first I see the report says we're going from $162 to $192 per ton, which is, by my calculations, 18.5% increase. which is whopping, considering today's conditions of inflation is half that or a third that. But my question is really around the subsidies that came out in 2021. And I'd like to have some indication about why that subsidy was put in place. It says $16 per ton. And are there any current subsidies, requisition-funded subsidies in place? I have a second question after that.
Mr. Stevens.
Pardon me. Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I think I'll defer to my colleague Ilsa. She probably has a little bit more information regarding that. I've only been with the CVRD since 2020, and this is prior to my tenure here.
Ms. Sarady, welcome.
Thank you very much. Through to you, Director Morrison. So I think the subsidy conversation here in the first paragraph of the report refers to the fact that the actual cost of landfilling is greater than what we're currently charging residents. So that in itself results in a subsidy. So we're using tax dollars to pay for garbage. So people who are not paying the fair share of what it costs to landfill are being subsidized. So that's what that refers to. We do, insofar, we do subsidize some recycling costs like couches, but yeah, otherwise we don't provide subsidies.
And
Director Martman.
A follow-up, if I may, and this refers to my question refers to a table in the bylaws in the attachment number 2. And I'm just not sure I understand that table, and like to have an explanation, because it shows a bag fee going to $9, but it also talks about trucks and other loads that might come in, and I'm not sure I relate that to the $192. So maybe the explanation of that table, please.
Mr. Stevens?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you, Director Martman. Yeah, so that table is just outline the tipping cost per metric ton, and then there's also some other charges in the event that the scales are not, or that we don't have power at the scales, that we can charge per load. So it's a single axle truck and a dual axle truck. So it's just so that we can keep the facilities open in the event of a power outage. Thank you.
Thank you. I have to monitor those times then when that happens. Put it out on Facebook. Sorry, yeah. Not to make light of it.
Final remark?
So yeah, final remark. And I think this is, I hear the comments about, from Director Atkin and about, having the 3-stream in place and how can this all sort of come together. And it challenges me because I worry about illegal dumping. And I think it's a big concern in my area of that happening. So, is that going to be a consequence of this decision? Or do we hold off and get the 3-stream in place and say that, yeah, this is a concern that we recognize and acknowledge, and we, patch it through requisition until that happens, because that is a reality, I think, out there of people that recognize that they just can't pay to drop their garbage. Thank you.
Is Mr. Stevens?
Thank you, Director Martman, through you, Mr. Chair. So there's a few of the barriers that come up when it comes to illegal dumping. Some of them are, if they, as we outlined by Director Stone, that if the facility is closed and they have garbage, they want to tip that, they go around the corner and tip that. There's also end of the month move outs when residents are moving from one location to another and they have an additional volume of garbage that they want to or need to get rid of. And then there's also some of the access to facilities and options. So for example, they may not have a car. But I do also want to point out that a lot of the data shows when we find illegally dumping areas, that there's a lot of materials in there, free to recycle, such as electronics, large appliances, tires, etc., which are all free to drop off at the facility. So there's other motives behind the illegal dumping than just the barriers of the disposal costs. Most of our residents are responsible, and they will dispose of their materials and their garbage responsibly. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Stevens. And just to interject very quickly, this is a very fulsome discussion, and we should get back to the motion at hand, which is the tipping fees. But just on a good news front, the CVRD is acknowledged to be a very effective at what we do and what your staff do, as we have a really high diversion rate. We are looked at from not only across the island but across the province for the work that we do in this region. So there is good news around this, and our staff do a fantastic job. And I just wanted to highlight that, and what Director Stone was saying about the maybe the look of exporting our garbage, off the island into somewhere else. And yes, a lot of people do talk about the need for us to look after our own stuff until we start trying to figure out where we're going to site it. And then people don't want to be near the landfill. So it's been a problem that this board has been dealing with for years. Director Acton and Director Nicholson are both on the list to speak next for a second round. I know Director Acton has something she might want to introduce after the resolutions, so I'll go to Director Nicholson and we can address what Director Acton has afterwards. Director Nicholson, please.
Thank you. Well, I would like to come back to the $7 to $9 minimum tipping fee for someone who doesn't have garbage service and has to drive all the way to Bings Creek. And it just, to me, seems excessive on top of the cost of fuel. So I really am concerned about illegal dumping, and this to me is a disincentive to that, or incentive to continue dumping illegally. And I really feel we should be providing fair service to those who don't have garbage pickup currently. And if you calculate $192 per ton, it's about just close to $5 for 25 kilograms. So I'm not sure that the additional $4 of cost that the CVRD claims to have is really necessary right now. And we have super tough times for people, and I know that for me, it really triggered me because I don't have garbage pickup, so I'm sure I'm not the only one so I would like to see this go back to staff to fix that, or a motion that changes it to remain at $7. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Nicholson, and this is my finance hat just went on, and if we do the one, which I actually believe is smart, I think a flat rate for the folks to go that they know that they can afford. I really liked it when I think it was $5, but that has a knock-on effect on the 192, and so it may be appropriate to refer this back to staff. So, but just quickly, we should probably give them some direction as to if we are going to refer it, there's going to have to be some recalculation done. So I turn to the committee. Is there a desire to not raise the additional amount or have a set fee? I'm looking for hands. I'm looking for suggestions. Any particular thoughts around that? Or even staff, if you've got a suggestion as to how we can not raise that minimum charge for folks arriving at with a couple of small loads. Not everybody at once now. Mr. Stevens?
Yep, thank you. Thank you, Director, or Mr. Chair. I mean, we could definitely look at the volume that's associated with the minimum tipping charge. So we could reduce the volume that's associated to calculate that minimum charge. But one of the, a couple of benefits that, I think we need to also consider when people are bringing materials to the landfill is that, it's encouraging people to, develop larger loads of garbage before they come to the facility. It's going to reduce greenhouse gases. It's going to reduce operating costs of the landfill. It's going to reduce the lineups at the facility as well. So there's definitely a few benefits there. But I mean, we can definitely go back and recalculate the thresholds and the impacts of the minimum charge. But just to add to that, all vehicles that come into the facility are weighed in and out. So the $7 minimum charge only applies to anybody that's less than 50 kilograms of material right now. So if it's and we'd like to encourage that people come in with a little bit more material rather than coming in with low volumes. Thank you.
So I think a motion to refer this to staff. I do want to ask about the timeliness of having a resolution and then going to the board and for year end. Is there concerns around that for yourself or Mr. Stevens or finance?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So you're in regards to budget planning for 2023, is that what you refer to? So no, we're happy. We can take we look to probably get back to the board pretty quickly with an updated report in December. And in that meantime, during that time, we'll do the financial implications as well. So what the options, we can provide a couple of different options about how to address that.
Thank you. I'm going to go to Director Stone then Acton. Director Stone, go ahead.
I was just going to say I would support a referral that directed to come back to us with options. If we hold the tipping fees the same, what is the implications to the budget? And then, have more informed discussion about, those two forks in the road, if you will.
And you were making that referral motion?
Well, I didn't want to cut off Director.
I think Director Acton's concerns can be incorporated in that.
Well, I would move that we refer this back to staff for the report on financial alternatives to accommodate keeping the minimum fee at $7.
Seconded by Director McGonigal. It's not a debatable motion. Are all those in favor? Any opposed? None opposed. The motion carries. Thank you, Mr. Stevens. Thank you, Mr. Boyson. We've been here a little over an hour. Reconvene at 10:45. Turn your mics and your cameras off. Yep. We're live, everyone, and welcome back. And just before we get going, again, I was remiss in acknowledging our amazing support staff in Rebecca as our recording secretary, Mr. Robbins as our corporate officer, and Chase from IT who makes sure we all get to stay online. So thank you for being here and the fine work that you do. Turn to Mr. Robbins. I believe we're on R2. Report from Community Services, Mr. Robbins.
That's correct, Mr. Chair. R2, the report from Community Service Departments with regards to Sport Tourism Event Grant Subcommittee. There's a multi-part recommendation. The recommendation is around sport tourism event grants totaling $16,075.
Thank you. Mr. Elzinga.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and through to the committee, perhaps just some information. Since 2014, within the Function 121 budget for economic development, there's been recognition of the region providing support to local sport organizations as well as multi-sport events because of the economic benefit. And since 2017, there has been $30,000 set aside in 2 intakes per year to support our local sport organizations as they bring in regional, provincial, Western Canadian, or Canadian events. And so they do the heavy lifting on the organizing. This is just a incentive for them to do that. We do have a 5-member subcommittee of this committee that provides recommendations to you, of which Director Manhas is the one sitting member here today who is part of that subcommittee. So that subcommittee has met, determined the recommendations based on economic benefit, how many hotel nights, how many people are coming to our region, and that's why you see the numbers before you. So there are a number of recommendations for a number of sports. I don't know if Director Manhas would like to provide any more information.
Director Manhas, do you have anything to add?
No, I think Mr. Elzinga summed everything up, and I will move the recommendation.
Moved and seconded by Director Stone. Director Markman, do you have any comment, question?
Thank you, and thank you for this. I'm always interested in the sports side of activities. don't see anything with lacrosse. That's something near and dear to my family.
Director Manhouse or Elzinga? Mr. Elzinga.
So, thank you, Mr. Chair, through to Director Martman. So there is significant advertising through local media to ask for applications from all sports, including lacrosse. It is 2 intakes per year, so it depends seasonally on who would apply. We also have databases through this function for sport calendars, for facilities, and so we actually put the information out to our sport contacts around the region. We have hundreds of sport contacts that we advise of intake periods. So I'm certain that lacrosse was notified. It's whether they had a appropriate event to apply for.
Director McGonigal.
Thank you very much. Through you, Mr. Chair, just a comment and an observation. It's nice to see that there is such a diverse aspect of the sporting community represented in these grants, everything from archery to cycling to hockey, that it's not one focus on a recreation group that these grants are afforded to. So my thanks to the committee for bringing this forward, and I will most certainly support this recommendation.
Thank you. Director Deck.
I just have a question about how many female teams there are in this grant application, or is it a grant application? No. Yeah, grant.
Would you have that information, Mr. Elzinga?
Mr. Chair, I don't have that information at my fingertips, but I can see that some of these applications are for both female and male participants. So things like the swim meet, for instance. So I don't have the number of exact participants. I don't.
Oh, thank you, thank you. I just was wondering about it on account of diversity.
Actually, Mr. Chair, if I can add that I note down to the Sun Bowl, which is the Cowichan women's flag football, and that has been a long-standing event specifically for ladies playing football.
Thank you.
Gymnastics, there are certain ones there.
Thank you.
And great question, and also to the, I don't know whose brilliant idea it was to have a sport tourism event grant subcommittee, but it certainly makes our job a lot easier, and I think they've done an amazing job in adjudicating the various requests and making sure that the money was most effectively placed. So I thank Director Manhouse for that. Did we have the resolution moved and seconded? We did. Any further discussion on this item? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Are there any opposed? Passes unanimously. Next item, R3, and this is from Legislative Services. I'll go to Mr. Robbins, and then I think I'll go to Director Acton, who's asked to speak to this. So, Mr. Robbins.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The report from Legislative Services with regards to local government incorporation and restructure, it's for your direction. As the author of the report, I'd be happy to provide you a little synopsis if you would like.
Please go ahead.
The report is just an update on activity since receiving a reply to the CVRD's letter to the minister, their reply of April 1st, 2022, with respect to South Cowichan governance. And speaking with the ministry, to pursue a study would necessitate staff reviewing next steps and costs and resources should the board wish to pursue a governance study, as the 2009 studies that were completed are now outdated.
Thank you. Director Acton.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So there's been a long-standing interest in South Cowichan of incorporating, and since then, our population's increased 25%. So I would say that the interest is 25% greater, and the need is 25% greater. There's no doubt that we could make a big list here today of all the things that we're not serviced by, and we talk about this at this table sometimes as well. The last interaction with the province was to move forward with our governance study, which was to be 100% funded by them, because that's how the process goes, and our funding was pulled. So we're trying to initiate that conversation again. And since then, of course, we've had different directors, we've had different residents associations or committees, incorporation committees popping up here and there, and every time we talk to the province, we get a different answer. So our MLA, Sonia Firstnow, has sent a request to the minister for the 3 South area directors and our CAO to meet with directly with the minister and get a clear path forward, because at this point, we've heard so many different things. We'd just like to get it right from the minister and get that commitment, because that wasn't what we were told when we initially tried to ask for support 10 months ago. We weren't told, so anyway, so that would be my request to the committee, that we just step back from the process for a minute and do that step first.
Thank you, Director Acton. Director Douglas.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, we have had some discussion with regards to this this item internally at North Cowichan, and we do have some concerns about what the implications would be of going down this path of a South Cowichan municipality. One is that there has been discussion at the board over the years and within our municipality about taking more of a regional approach to growth management. And I think that's going to be really challenging if you're going down the path of creating a South Cowichan municipality, which I think would inevitably soak up a lot of the future growth and development in this region and make it much more challenging to densify some of our existing cores. Related to that as well is, as a municipality, and I know Duncan, Lake Cowichan, and Ladysmith are in the same boat. We're facing major infrastructure deficits. We're depending in large part on the senior levels of government to step up to provide that funding. And having another municipality at the south end is just going to create more competition for all of us. And again, if there is a lot of growth in that south end, it's going to require significant infrastructure and investments from the senior levels of government. I'd also add as well that there were as everyone knows, recent announcements this week with regards to the provincial government's intended approach with increasing housing supply. And, I know in North Cowichan, we're anticipating that there's a high likelihood we're going to be included in these 8 to 10 areas that are going to be assigned growth targets. And again, if we're going to be assigned growth targets in North Cowichan, Ladysmith, Duncan, it's going to be challenging to meet those growth targets if there's more and more growth being pulled to the south end. So, ideally, I would rather not see the board go down this path, but as a compromise, I'd suggest that if we still want to explore it, maybe put this off until we've done our strategic planning session, which I'm assuming is coming up fairly quick, to figure out what our priorities are going to be as a board, and then decide if we want to go down this path of a South Cowichan municipality, which, again, as we've discussed internally at North Cowichan, our view is this is going to be a vehicle for regional sprawl, which this board and our member municipalities have indicated they've been opposed to for many years. And there's been a lot of talk about that, but not a lot of action. So that's my position. And again, we've discussed this internally at North Cowichan. Rather not go down this path, but if folks want to keep pursuing it, then at least put it off till we figured out our priorities as a board through our regional planning session, a strategic planning session. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Douglas. Just for reference, I've got Director Stone, Wilson, and now Staples. Director Stone.
Yeah, I actually concur with Director Acton in that we need some more clarity on what the process looks like, the demand on the organization, the financial implications for the CVRD, the resource implications for staff. Seems like a lot of things are changing and how things are done, and that clarity is super important. I don't think we can actually move forward without understanding what the financial and resource implications are for the CVRD when we're consistently told, and we know that we're consistently resource and financially strapped. We just had conversations about, the affordability of things in the region. So I may not necessarily agree 100% with with Director Douglas's concerns around, you know, how the growth is managed in the south, because we're seeing that bleed over, if you will, from the Capital Regional District already, and without the tools necessary for proper planning. And there may be some tools within the modernized OCP and land use designations and zoning within that plan. But I do think we need to have a region-wide conversation, and I don't want to say the word out loud, around regional growth, right? And how we're going to accommodate it. At both North Cowichan, I think, led the way with their new OCP. The town of Ladysmith is getting close to adopting ours as well. And I think the municipalities have said we're willing to do our part to manage the growth for the region in the right way, both sustainable from an economic and an environmental standpoint. But I think before we can move forward on this, I think Director Acton said it, we need to have that clarity on what the cost and resource implications are. And really understand, I think, at least at a high level, what the cost implications are for the residents of those areas. When you're so built up with so many different utilities and water and sewer systems, complying with municipal regulations around waste, you know, knowing in small communities we're talking about $50, $100 million plus of infrastructure deficit, building out that necessary water, sewer, storm, sidewalks, roads. I guess my final words would be very careful what you ask for.
Thank you, Director Stone. Director Wilson.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. You know, I'm the one that's sometimes told to be very careful with the words that I use here. And I've just heard the word competition. It's not a competition. I'm sorry, Rob, it's not. You know, we are here to do the best we can for the citizens and the residents that we have here. And if that means going down the road of exploring what options are available to us, then that's what this is all about. There are lots of pros and cons to amalgamation, but there's also lots of myths and legends out there. And the process here is to get that report to say, this is what it will cost, this is what it entails, and this is what will happen. And the only way you can do that is by moving ahead and asking the province to come forward with a detailed report, given the changing circumstances. So I want to see that report. It's going to take a couple of years, but the sooner we can get that into place, the better. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Wilson. Director Staples.
Thank you. I fully support the process that has been outlined by Director Acton, and just to sort of add to a few of the things that have been said without reiterating a lot of the areas that I support that have been spoken, including regional growth. I will reiterate that strategy. I believe that is something that we really do need to focus on. But that does not change the fact that, you know, this area should pursue this conversation, because this is no longer a rural area by any stretch of the imagination. And so, you know, when you visit other regional districts in other areas, ours is very different because of the growth that we've been facing. And as I've said before at this board, and I will continue to say over and over again, we need to look at, and I believe this is the first step, at how we restructure our region. It doesn't take away from the fact that we'll still have regional, a regional district of some model, but I believe that this is the first step to making the changes that we do need to do, because our areas are changing and they are starting to connect. You know, you don't drive into or through a lot of areas now, and there isn't as much of a delineated space between some of those areas, but yet they're separate, and I don't believe that it works. I don't think it's functional. I feel that it's time for us to really pursue what this looks like, and this is going to be a long process. My understanding is these processes take years, and so it's time for us to begin that. It was probably time 10 years ago, so I absolutely support this moving forward as the first step to seeing what we do become before we're way past that conversation. So,
Thank you, Director Staples, and in the traffic cop role of Chair, I think that this is a step that is maybe one of 17 or two of 17. And there's a lot of important steps that have to go, or that have to take place before we get there. I think Director Douglas's suggestion around a fairly in-depth discussion at our our corporate strategic planning session, it makes a lot of sense. But I certainly have heard through, and I get to play the longtime guy here, there's been a lot of pent-up desire amongst the people in not just the south end, Shawnigan Lake, to begin exploring these next steps. And I think that it would be appropriate to begin that work. I'll go to Director Nicholson, who hasn't spoken yet, then Director Acton, then Stone and Justice. Okay, Nicholson? Kate? Okay, hang on. Before you start, we have Nicholson, Segal, Justice, Stone, and I'll close with Director Acton. Go ahead, Director Nicholson.
Thank you. I agree that figuring out how we're going to manage growth in the region as a whole is critical. I agree with Director Staples that, our boundaries don't make a lot of sense in many areas. And Area E sits in sort of the middle of this mix. And so I think when I read the report, what I understand is that we need to spend a bit of money or resources to pull together a rationale for the province if we are to expect them to fund the larger study and process. Is that my understanding from this report? So I guess the next step from my perspective is that we need to understand how much it's going to cost to get that rationale done, because it speaks to, we haven't done our strategic planning, and we need to do that and think about where we're going for the next 4 years, preferably before we get into this budget process. So could I move that we ask staff to come back with a recommendation or with information on how much the financial cost is going to be for this?
Can I ask you to hold that for just a second, just inquire with staff? Has there been any consideration of this in our budget planning thus far? I imagine it would be a general government expenditure. And so would there be any difficulties in making that happen? I gather we're launching into budget right away, right? So would you need a resolution to include a number in that, in the budget preparation? Mr. Robbins?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd suggest the board start with a request of staff to put together a bit of a framework where we can take a bit of time and then figure out in terms of the dollar necessary, whether we have in-house resources that can do this or whether we need some outside help to get us to put together a rationale for you to present to the ministry. So a motion to just refer that to staff, and we can come back with a bit of a framework and a cost associated with that can then feed into the budget. And we can do that in a timely manner for you.
Would that suffice, Director Nicholson?
Yeah, that's fine, but I would also add that when we do this when we think about preparing this framework, I think we need to think beyond just the South Cowichan, because it does have implications more broadly than that. So there needs to be sort of a framework that allows us to do that.
Thank you. I go to Director Segal.
I just want to make a comment about the infrastructure deficits, and the south end areas with our increasing population has old infrastructure that's dependent on improvement districts right now, which can't access any federal or provincial funding. And the CVRD isn't necessarily able to take over all of those systems at once. So we need to look at other options.
Thank you. Director Justice.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I guess this flows from what both Director Stone and Director Nicholson were saying, but with respect to resource implications, and I ask this as a new director, just learning how it all works with the resources and costs associated with developing a comprehensive rationale, or any potential costs related to a governance study? Would they be borne by the entire region through general government, or would some of those costs fall to just the affected local areas?
Turn to staff. Who would like to take that one?
I can speak to that, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Robbins?
I think that we would have to provide that summation for you, as well as how you would pay for it and what function or functions could support that work. And so I wouldn't know off the top of my head. If I was guessing, which I hate to guess, I mean, it could be a general, fall under general government. But we'd need to look to see the implications, as Director Nicholson said. If you request staff to do a little broader look at that, there may be other financial implications for other areas as well, or the CVRD as a whole.
Thank you.
Excellent answer. Director Stone?
Yeah, I think that kind of was on my list of questions, but I think it all comes back to resourcing, and, you know, Director Segal just said be careful what you wish for. You know, I know in a very small municipality with much more density than areas A and B, for example, and C, the cost per household of infrastructure investment is exorbitantly high. And over the last few years, we've seen a dramatic drop-off in the amount of funding being delivered to local governments, what they call oversubscription of grant applications. We're talking about, you know, a $150 million pot with over $1 billion in applications for that one round, and no rounds of funding subsequent to those. And that's before COVID inflation and sometimes 30 to 50% cost increases in major capital projects we've seen over the last 2 years. So, you know, my concern is that even in places where we're looking at like 30% of our core infrastructure renewal, the initial development of the required infrastructure to meet compliance from municipalities around water, wastewater, and stormwater, for an area the geographic size of the South End, we'd be talking in the hundreds of millions of dollars. And what are the financial implications for that? Not including adding the roads budgets and things to the taxpayers down there. But that's what the study would answer to a degree. So in this moment, it comes down to what is the cost and implications for resources. So I'm happy to support a motion that would send that back to staff to understand the budget implications and the staff time resource implications of moving forward.
Thank you, Director Stone. To Director Acton, possibly to close.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Wow, you guys, I can't believe so many comments about worrying about, you know, we talk about we want to be like this regional thinker, we're talking about urban sprawl. This is encouraging urban sprawl, and we have 20,000 people in the south, and we're the closest to the city. Extremely, property values are assessed so high. Did you know that we pay something called a rural tax that pays for our roads and police, and it just goes into general government, doesn't come back to us necessarily. And, you know, we just want our communities safe and healthy, and like the road situation is massive. We can't have a lower speed limit than 50 kilometers an hour going through our village, going through, I live on a road that's 60 kilometers an hour, is considered a rural highway. And so we can't live this way anymore. It is causing urban sprawl I'm just shocked that people are concerned about how we can say in one moment that we're worried about regional growth, and a regional growth strategy. It's coming, it's already there. We're so close to the city, and it's causing urban sprawl, and it's causing us not to be able to make the decisions and prevent that. As far as Shawnigan Lake goes, it's a beautiful rural place, and people can just come along and mow all the trees down and tend to be able to do what they want. So, and Machosen is a perfect example of no growth, no sidewalks, kept their rural charm, and it's safe to drive and walk on the sides of the roads, and that's simply all we're asking for. And so, you know, I hope that the conversation's gonna change, and it's kind of concerning when I hear that our request is discussed at North Cowichan table and how it's gonna affect them. It's like, you know, let's support each other. The rural communities support the municipalities at this table by being here. So I don't know. Anyway, thank you. We just want to go to the minister and actually get the true information. We've heard so many different things in the community over 10 years. We just want clarity and a clear path forward.
I'm hoping that it was Director Stone quickly writing something down what might form a motion. Did I miss you? Or did you want to go back on the list? Then we'll go, can you wait, Director Stone? Okay, Director Staples, go ahead. Okay, I've got one. So.
What I would like to do is, you know, I think that it's fine to talk to staff about costs and different things, but again, I feel like that's kind of a bit of chicken before the egg, because I think the discussion has to happen to know exactly what the process needs to be, and then those discussions happen. So I would just like to see that discussion move forward and then bring that information back. We can talk about this as strategic planning. It doesn't take away our opportunity to do any of those things, but that discussion should happen so that we have everything. So
Yeah, hang on.
that's what I would like to see happening.
Thank you, Director Staples. Director Stone?
Right, I just want to clarify, if I in any way indicated unsupportive to this conversation, that's not at all it. I'm just talking about the reality of the outcomes, but the study needs to be done. I'm not disagreeing with that. Then you can make an informed decision on how you would like to move forward. I think Director Staples just said it, and to me, that's rolled up, right? Like, you need to go back to the ministry. What do you expect from this rationale? What does it cost to do the rationale, and then what are the implications beyond that? So clarity is always key in local government work. If you don't know the resource implications and the financing, you can't make a decision. So to get those, we need to understand what the scope of this rationale is and kind of get it moving, right? And the study will do its own work and talk about what both the implications are to the region as a whole and to the organization and to the residents of South Cowichan, areas A, B, and C, parts of whatever decide that they'd want to move forward with that. So I'm supportive of it. Sorry I didn't get a resolution together. But I think the conversation needs to be advanced, but we do have a lot of strains on our limited resources, and we just have to make sure we can stick handle it through the wickets, so to speak.
So just before I go to Director Nicholson, and just sort of summing up what I've been hearing from around the table, I was going to hope that someone might move that first item, that staff arrange a meeting with the minister for the appropriate directors, and the second part that there be a referral to staff to develop a framework and costing with resources to explore incorporation in the areas of A, B, and C and the possible regional impacts. And we've got great people that could probably refine that a little bit more, but does that meet the general direction of what the committee is looking at? And I'll go to Director Nicholson.
Yes, except I think what we want to do is prepare a rationale to support the request to the province to fund the larger study. We don't want to take on that. I don't think your wording quite reflected that.
Yeah, so thank you for that, Director Nicholson, and I think we can tighten that up, but that's absolutely the intent, is that the directors go and have the meeting with the minister and explore what the requirements are, and I think concurrently our staff can begin the work. There's some pretty smart people in the room that know what the incorporation process is, so that's intended in the resolution. So I just look to you, could I introduce that and have someone move and second that resolution? Director Stone, go ahead.
Yeah, I would just say it would be really helpful if staff were interjecting to help us formulate this discussion, because I think we're kind of all saying similar things, but kind of flopping around like a fish out of water. But that being said, I think if we can capture what Director Nicholson said, and that's captured in that motion, I would be prepared to move it.
So I go to Mr. Robbins or our CAO and ask if you get the intent of what the committee is recommending to the board.
Yes, Mr. Chair, that does make sense. The one thing I'll just interject to add is that the province would fund the study, but we would be procuring the consultant. So the province, there's been some discussion that the province would be doing the study. We would have to find the consultant to complete the study.
Okay, I'll add provincial funding of the study to that. I saw a hand over here. No further hands. Director Douglas?
Do we get a seconder for the motion?
Not yet.
I did.
Mr. Chair, can we not get the staff report before any commitments made to meeting with the minister responsible? Just, we're going to have limited opportunities to make asks
We don't
upon.
need permission to meet with the minister.
Hang on. So the express desire that I heard from directors was to get in front of the minister as the very first step in the process. So that's inherent in the resolution that has now been put forward and seconded. So that's, if you want to speak to that as to, and your concerns, the floor is yours.
Yeah, I guess my view, I'd rather have the staff report first to see what kind of analysis they're going to provide before the board commits to making this a priority with the ministers, because there's going to be only a certain limited number of initiatives and asks that we can bring forward to the provincial government over these next few years. And just, we can go to them with all kinds of asks, or we can take a bit more of a targeted approach. But I think, as Director Atkins said, if, these South End directors want to meet with the minister, I don't know if the board's... Sure, and the North Cowichan can meet with the minister as well, discuss it as well. So we can all take that approach, or we can decide it at the regional table here and agree on what's going to make most sense for the entire regional district.
Thank you, Director Douglas. Director Wilson, and we do have a resolution on the floor now, so discussion around the resolution.
Yeah, it's getting complicated, isn't it? No disrespect to Director Segal. I kind of wish that Director Salmon was right here now, because at UBCM last year, we did have a meeting with the ministry. There was myself, Director Salmon, and I think Director Acton was meant to be there, but for some reason she couldn't do it. But they laid it out very clearly as to what we had to do, and they were quite receptive on it. So meeting with the actual minister would be a great idea, because we met with his staff. Very useful, very helpful. That's not speaking to the thing, but it's just to say that we have had a meetings and they are fairly receptive on this. So I'd like to move forward on this. Let's not make it too complicated, please.
Mike, lift your camera.
Okay, so hang on, everyone. So we've had to the resolution, Director Acton. The resolution is that staff arrange a meeting for the appropriate directors. The second part is that the referral to staff to develop a framework, costing, resources, to explore incorporation in A, B, and C, and that the provincial government provide the funding. So that's the intent. I'll go to Director Toporowski to close.
Thank you. I also noticed that Director McClint might have had a comment, but everybody was talking, so just recognizing that, the chair. Yeah, I know we've talked about this before, and I know Director Acton had brought this forward, and I don't see anything wrong with bringing this information to us, and that, as Director Stone said, we can make a more informed decision on what those implications would be going forward for everyone. So I just wanted to add my thoughts from that. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Toporowski. So Director McClinton doesn't have his hand up. I'm seeing Director Stone to close, and then I'd like to call the question. I think we're there.
So I think these things can happen in tandem. The minister's meeting is not required to get that information from staff. They can talk to ministry staff and say, this is what you need to do, and bring back that scope. So whether the meeting with the minister was just last September at UBCM, that's only 2 months ago, I think we can still move forward the conversation at this table if or the minister can or cannot meet, because we can work with ministry staff to get the scope and costs.
Everybody comfortable with voting on this issue now? Everyone's clear on the resolution? I'll call the question. All those in favor? Are there any opposed? Two opposed, the motion carries. That resolution will go to this afternoon's board. Mr. Robbins? Go to this afternoon's board?
If you'd like to include that as a,
Do we want to see that, or one of the directors for the areas would like to see it included in this afternoon's? Okay, next item, Mr. Robbins.
the next item is R4, which is the report from the Parks and Trails Division with regards to Cowichan Valley Trail North Watts Road entrance. There's an offer of an accessible pit toilet and picnic table. And if I may, I'll read the recommendation before you, that it be recommended to the board that the offer of an accessible universal design pit toilet and picnic table for the Cowichan Valley Trail North Watts Road entrance through the Targeted Regional Tourism Development Initiative funded through the province of BC be approved.
Mr. Robbins knows how to read a room. Do we have a mover and a seconder for that item? Moved by Director Wilson, seconded by Director Stone. Any discussion on the item? Director Nicholson.
Just remind me, please, where's North Watts?
Director Stone?
Director McClinton's got his hand up as well. It's
Yeah,
the
I'm gonna
northern
go to him.
terminus of that section of the Cowichan Valley Trail. It's that parking lot area that we've all talked about a lot. So it's putting the toilet where the parking lot is.
And the
apparently.
people are.
Yeah, where the people park and access the trail. But
Director McClinton, welcome.
Thank you. Yeah, first of all, very welcomed additions, picnic table and a toilet. Yeah, much needed on the trail. Just reading through the questions through the chair to the staff. The request for proposal for the parking lot was put out. I'm just curious, has that plan for the parking lot been finalized? And just a comment in general about that area. There's significant safety concerns among the residents in Area G around that area. It's extremely dangerous and there's no connectivity between Ladysmith to the trail. So just, I know that's probably beyond the scope of what we're talking about here, but just want to make note of that.
We'll let you pull the rookie card on that one and go to
Thank you.
Ms. Soroka.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Nice to meet you. Yes, that is beyond the scope of this, but basically we do have the RFP out right now, and it closes on December 9th, and plans have basically been finalized for that area. So, and will provide some connectivity to Ladysmith in the north.
Any follow-up, Director McClinton?
Can I?
Please.
Is there the 9th? Yeah. Is there any opportunity to extend that and possibly have feedback from the PAC on the parking lot layout?
Might I suggest this sounds like an offline discussion that you
Sure.
might have, because it's not even tangential to the question, so to
Sure.
speak. So, Director Stone?
Thank you.
yeah, so just for everybody's information, especially the new folks, there is connectivity to the trail portion, a roadside trail portion we're at the town of Ladysmith boundary, in addition to the parking lot stuff. But I was just going to say that this is a good opportunity for associated staff members to connect with Director McClinton to sort of go through it and understand the history there, because the crosswalk issue, the roadside path issue, the parking lot issue have been through the grist mill a few times, and there's solid rationale behind the plans that have been made.
And this is a really exciting opportunity to accept some money for an improvement.
Yes,
So,
I do accept that.
any further discussion on this item? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All in favor? Are there any opposed? None opposed, the motion carries. Mr. Robbins, next item.
Which is R4, is the report from Parks and Trails Division with regards to Capital Reserve Establishment bylaws for functions 456, which is Saltaire Recreation, and function 490, which is Thetis Island Wharf. There is a two-part recommendation. That it be recommended the board on November 23rd, 2022, that 1, the CVRD bylaw number 4455, Thetis Island Wharf Capital Reserve Fund Establishment bylaw number 2022 be forwarded to the board for consideration of 3 readings and adoption. And 2, that CVRD bylaw 4456, Saltaire Recreation Capital Reserve Fund Establishment bylaw 2022 be forwarded to the board for consideration of 3 readings and adoption.
Director McClinton, would you like to start off on this one?
Thank you, yes. In agreement on both of these. Just really, the biggest comment is on Thetis, just around their dock. It's been identified to me many occasions that it's their biggest priority as it relates to the CVRD. There's significant safety concerns as it's not really a recreational piece for them anymore. It's more considered of a essential service. It's not used as much as recreation. They have as many as 5 to 10, emergencies per month where they're evacuating people. And with the state of the dock, they need to park at the top in the dark, in the rain, and carry people down on the gurney. So establishing this, moving in this direction, I think is going to be welcomed by the residents on Thetis. So just a comment there. That's it.
Director Stone?
Yeah, my only comment is there was some correspondence received by the board. I think we all saw it. Sort of this is the conversation in the letter is that this is not that. This is establishing reserve funds, which is policy that's important to any function. So both Thetis Island Wharf and Saltaire Recreation do need that reserve funding bylaw established. So this isn't presupposing any future outcomes. It's just doing the proper fiscal policy that should be required to manage any asset under the purview of the regional district. So just for clarity for community members.
I'd entertain a motion. It's been recommended, moved by Director Stone, seconded by Director McClinton. Any further discussion on these items? Seeing none, all those in favor? Are there any opposed? Not opposed, the motion carries. R6.
Mr. Chair, R6 is a report from the Finance Division with regards to 2023 Revenue Anticipation Borrowing Bylaw number 4453. This is for information, as the bylaw will be brought forward before the board for consideration.
Any, Director Stone?
I was going to let you do it, but just a refresher for the new folks. We're not borrowing a bunch of money.
Yeah.
This is just because we don't collect taxes until summer, and we do have expenses to maintain between now and then. But my understanding through the staff would be that typically we're working through reserve funds or other sources of funding, but it's just there if we need it to maintain operations and projects, et cetera.
And they need the resolution on the books in advance. So with that, information only, no resolution required. Mr. Robbins, next. R7.
R7 is a report from the Operations Department with regards to Recycling Center's free store update. There's a 2-part recommendation that I'll read for you.
Can you hold off on that for a moment, please?
You bet.
Director Stone.
Sorry. Did you sense my face turn red? Sorry. Is this so that I can speak to it, or
Yes.
I don't have any kind of an alternative motion prepared, but yeah, and I want to check my bias. I have a long history of free store diving, if you will. But I think that, and I understand the challenges with any kind of diversionary reuse, recycle program, is there's costs associated with it. There's a cost-benefit analysis that has to be done. But in my mind, the highest form of recycling is reuse and repurposing. And I've seen things at our own facilities that were really troubling to me, where things that truly do have value, and not just to vintage hi-fi geeks like me, but to many people are binned up, and it is really difficult to properly, safely recycle, especially things like electronics. And when any item has reuse value, I'd like to see if we can find a way to support it. And I understand we have financial considerations and operational implications with things like free stores. But I think they are a really important part of the conversation that we have around managing waste. And I'd hate for us to sort of move so quickly to restrict or eliminate that. and I joked about it. I haven't gone into the free store in many years. I unfortunately don't have time anymore, other than to drop off my own items. But I also know how important it is to folks that are of limited means. And often those items do two things. One, they provide a useful item that is available to somebody who needs it. But I've actually seen on Facebook Marketplace, especially during COVID, people looking for good reusable items to upcycle, to create an opportunity to them for them to raise additional income. I've seen people trying to pop up and take advantage of the lack of free stores during some of the COVID period by saying, we'll become your free store, because they want the opportunity to upcycle things. So I don't know if it's a referral back or we have a long conversation at this meeting, being respectful of time, but I wouldn't want us to move so quickly to sort of limit or end that conversation around free stores.
Thank you, Director Stone, and it's my desire that we get a little additional information, and I'm hoping we can get a referral to staff. I think there's other cost implications that would be wise for us to consider. This is an incredibly popular aspect of the services that we provide, and I'd like to see more. Came prepared to discuss it fully today before I found out I'd be sitting in the chair. So with that, I'll go to Director Staples, and if someone would like to entertain a referral motion to staff, that would be wonderful. Director Staples.
Yeah, I agree with everything Director Stone put forward on this, and I hear more about the free store than I do about anything else to do with waste. About that I get asked probably 3 times a week about when the free store is going to be back up and running. And so, and for other reasons too, I mean, speaking to what Director Stone was saying, there are still a lot of people who can't even access that because they don't have transportation to even get to Bings Creek. So we're still talking about, we're leaving out a lot of people even with what we're doing. I like the idea of some kind of partnership with Habitat in some way, but I would like to see this referred back to staff, and I would put forward that motion.
Moved and seconded. Any further discussion? We got a resolution on the floor, Mr. Boyson. We're going to refer it to you. Do you have anything you'd like to add?
No, Mr. Chair, I just wanted, if there was a chance for me to just make a comment about the report.
Please go ahead.
So the intent for us to bring forward this discussion was to make sure that there were some challenges within having a free store that we think were worth highlighting. This is not an intent, I hopefully, as the chair is mentioning, maybe to stop the conversation. That's not the intent. The solid waste working group that we have, we hope we get lots of feedback and ideas about how to do things better. We're not necessarily, this is not about us shutting down the discussion. So I just want to make sure that that's clear. We just want to make sure that we have our staff, since we had a really valuable staff meeting last night. We got our whole team from Bings Creek, everybody on the ground who deals with all the issues related to free store and the day-to-day interactions with staff. And there's a strong reaction to free stores and the way that, so from the staff level through to managers and how the stuff that we have to work with to make a free store successful, but also all the challenges related to it. We just want to make sure those are clear and legitimate concerns that we need to share with you. That said, we're all about trying to figure out some solutions here about how to, and we understand how much the public likes that service too. So thank you for letting me
Thank
share
you for that comment. I'll go to Director Stone to close. Oh, you're done? Okay, so referral motion, not debatable. All those in favor? Any opposed? None opposed, the motion carries. Next item, R8.
Mr. Chair, R8 is a report from the Facilities and Transit Division with regards to a license of use agreement with the Lake Cowichan Fire Department Transit Shelter. There is a recommendation before the committee.
Moved by Director McGonigal, seconded by Director Wilson. Would you read the resolution, please, Mr. Robbins?
That it be recommended to the board on November 23rd, 2022, that the license of use agreement with BC Transit in the town of Lake Cowichan, as described in the staff report to the November 23rd, 2022 committee, be approved.
Any discussion on this item? Director McGonigal.
If I may, through you, Mr. Chair, first of all, this is a good news story of the fire department implementing a building to accommodate a vintage fire truck, which necessitated the need to move that transit stop for the sub-regional or UBO service, with the idea that in that building would be an overhang to allow for some cover within inclement weather in that transit station that still resides there. The use agreement is a great move forward in a collaborative approach for transit in our region, and I'm happy to support this.
Any other comment? It does rain out there and it's appreciated. I'll call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? None opposed. The motion carries. Number 9, unfinished business. Do we have any, Mr. Robbins?
Mr. Chair, nothing under unfinished business, nothing under number 10, new business, which moves you to question period. We have no one indicating online their wish to ask you a question, and we don't see anybody in their gallery. There is no closed session, so that brings you to item 13, your adjournment.
Moved by Director Stone, seconded by Director Martman. All those in favor? I think it carries. Good job, everyone. See you at 1:30.